Good evening. This is Maestro Critello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 1v1 on Outer Reaches. Our first player today is Soul Drinkers, playing as the Chaos Lord, tanky Chaos melee hero in Terminator armor. Starts off with a big demon sword, also has a big combi bolter or twin-linked bolter for decent range damage. Can either emphasize melee later on with lightning claws or his blood maul, or he can even become pretty good at range with combi flamer. His opponent is Cyris, also playing as yet another Chaos Lord. So, we got a Chaos Mirror right here, and already we see we see that Soul Drinkers has chosen to be very, very aggressive. Actually went for, usually a lot of players would take their starting units, including their hero, to start capturing things on their side to get their economy started, as well as getting the VPs ticking down in their favor. But Soul Drinkers actually chose to be more aggressive, and he kind of went forward, was hoping to actually maybe get a unit off of this VP. Just went for a lot of early pressure, and he's actually putting a lot of Cyrus's basic units in base, pushing them back in base. And curiously, Cyris is actually, by comparison, so we've seen very different things already from these players. Soul Drinkers being very, very aggressive and harassing with his Chaos Lord. Cyris doing absolutely no fighting with his Chaos Lord and instead choosing him to capture up the map. Cyris also has not yet captured his power, which is also very, very curious, considering I think a lot of players, certainly myself, tend to prioritize capturing power because it is very, very critical in the early game, and you really ideally don't want to be in a situation where you find yourself out-teched. Now, we have different builds from both these players. Now, it's interesting that we see, of course, we have a mirror right here, and mirrors are interesting. Now, just a mirror by itself, like if you play a mirror against someone, that's not necessarily going to say who's better at that hero, because it's kind of just another matchup if you think about it. But one of the things that's interesting about a mirror matchup is that, like, both players have access to the same things. And, like, normally, that means that some of the ways that you would play other matchups don't really apply. Like, say, as a Chaos player, you often think in terms of, I get a squad of Chaos Space Marines. I know that I can have Chaos Space Marines engage Shooter Boys, engage Dire Avengers, engage Guardsmen favorably because the Chaos Space Marines can tank a lot of damage while bleeding models off of those squads because they have more health, they have heavy infantry armor, and while the other squads have less health and have infantry armor. Now, in a Chaos Mirror, you can't really think in those terms because both players are going to have Chaos Space Marines. So, I mean, it's really up to, there aren't really as many places where you just try to have favorable unit matchups. It depends more on positioning, what other things you do. Now, we also see that Cyris and Soul Drinkers have gone for different builds, and I think this is often a question, or like early on, like, do I go for double Chaos Space Marines or do I go for double Chaos Heretics? Now, double Heretics are typically more frequently, definitely more common in 1v1, also tend to be more common among higher level players than lower level players. Double Chaos Space Marines tend to be a lot more common among low to mid-level players, and also more common in teams than in 1v1. Now, I don't want to try to say that in a way that's like kind of disparaging, say like, well, because higher level players do it, you should just get double Heretics instead of double Chaos Space Marines. In this particular case, I actually feel like Cyrus's build is advantageous compared to Soul Drinkers, because he's going to have two different range squads that he can use to focus down the Chaos Lord. By comparison, I think Soul Drinkers is going to have an extra squad that gets countered by the Chaos Lord, in this case the Heretics. However, he is choosing to actually upgrade one of them to the grenade launchers, and that is a decent choice, just the way he can use that to do area of effect damage to Chaos Space Marines. Does still need to be very careful about letting his Heretics bleed to Chaos Space Marines, but that can also be used as a way of dealing with the Havoc as well. So if anything, there is a little bit more flexibility in Soul Drinker's build, especially since he chose to get a grenade launcher Heretic squad instead of keeping this one as melee. But I actually feel for this matchup that Cyrus's build is a bit better. especially with double Chaos Space Marines with Eternal War. The Chaos Lord is going to be basically Soul Drinker's Chaos Lord is not going to be that big of an issue for Cyris to deal with, because he actually has a lot of range fire, which is actually typically the weakness of the Chaos Opening. Usually that it has less range fire than most other, than the Tier 1 builds for most other races. And right now I also think Cyris is kind of winning a bit on the micro as well. Now Soul Drinkers had that very aggressive opening, he had early map control, and he was definitely winning on the VPs. Right, certainly at this, for the past minute or so and right now, Cyris, I feel, has had the better end of micro and just the way he's winning engagements and the way he's exerting pressure. Soul Drinkers is managing to kind of hold things at bay with his Havoc in the back here. Cyris is actually, he's keeping these Chaos Space Marines in here very, very long. I think it's actually time for him to get these Chaos Space Marines out of here. He did lose one model. I think he's, if anything, lucky to lose only one model. And he's being very, very brazen, choosing to keep these Chaos Space Marines in here. And at the moment, he can actually keep them kind of in here, but at this very moment, I think he now needs to get them out of here. Certainly this one that's nearly dead with only 90 health. And wow, Soul Drinker's actually coming very close to losing his own Havoc squad. And the Chaos Lord actually managing to just get in there with this Havoc being suppressed, as well as having some Heretic worship. Now, certainly one of the advantages of Soul Drinker's build is that he's going to have more potential worship support. So he's able to more emphasize some of the unique advantages of the Chaos Lord. And he's able to use that for things like using worship to actually kind of break the stranglehold that a Havoc will have on just a ranged mob. Both players going to Tier 2 at a roughly even pace. If we look at the power incomes, Soul Drinkers does have an advantage by having this bottom power node and also actually noting it. And that's also going to force Cyris to actually commit some time to taking this power node out. Now, interestingly, Cyris was upgrading to an Aspiring Champion. He actually decided not to. He does not have an Aspiring Champion on his Heretic squad. That is a way of just saving some power. The power cost of an Aspiring Champion is pretty expensive, although I really have no idea what the positioning is for this Havoc right here. I feel that's really not a great use of this Havoc. He might just want to protect those Heretics while they were actually getting that power node, so that he could really finish off that power node and capture it for himself. But I don't feel that was actually worth it. I feel like he should have done more to position his Havocs in a place that would be a little bit more beneficial. We see Soul Drinkers already going for a Blood Crusher, so I don't know if he's necessarily ahead, but he chose to get that Blood Crusher. Meanwhile, Cyris is ahead. He has more wreck, but he hasn't actually chosen to get anything. He hasn't chosen to get a Blood Crusher. And Cyris spent power on something. He must be kitting out his Chaos Lord. Yeah, he's doing that. So, and this is interesting. Just with Cyris is choosing to get upgrades. He's choosing to get upgrades on existing squads, while Soul Drinkers is choosing to get out an entirely new unit, and not just any unit, but he's actually choosing to get a vehicle. So he's choosing to take that initiative, and of course in Tier 2 you can always make that choice to take the initiative to get a vehicle, put that kind of pressure on your opponent to force them to react. You often gain a temporary advantage, and especially in this case with right now Cyris not actually having any actual AV, he just spent resources on upgrading his Chaos Lord, and the soonest thing he'll be able to get would be either a las cannon on his existing Havoc, or he could get a new Havoc with another las cannon, or he could get a squad of Plague Marines. But that's as much as he can get as far as power goes. Meanwhile, Cyris getting pushed back. He's suffering a generator bash right here. Not too much, but I mean, he's still, I think he's been on, right now he has less power income. Although Cyris, of course, did have a lot of that pressure before, where he was being very persistent with Chaos Space Marines not even having that much health. So it'll be interesting to see how Cyris chooses to react to this. He's choosing to react with the Chaos Lord, which is not really going to work that well. We actually see that he has done a little bit of light damage, but if anything, he's almost going to risk actually losing his Chaos Lord there. So I felt that was risky with not a whole lot of reward. He didn't actually lose much for it aside from field presence, but he still lost field presence, and right now it is Soul Drinkers with basically just with most of the map. He actually has the map quite overwhelmingly. And Cyris still has not really, well, he has gotten a Mark of Tzeentch Havoc. So that is a very powerful answer. And he's also choosing to get Plague Marines on top of that. And this is something that he's doing that I often wonder. This is something I would certainly like to invite the opinions of particularly higher level players of basically just doing this. And what I mean is that Cyris is choosing to get pretty overwhelming anti-vehicle answers in response to something like a Blood Crusher, which is a fairly light vehicle. And I think there are definitely a lot of players who would not get something like a Havoc and a Plague Marine, two pretty much dedicated anti-vehicle units for dealing with something like a Blood Crusher, which is fairly light as AV. They might even choose to do something like either keep the Havoc as suppression, get something like a Plague Marine squad, and then also try to get something else, like a Dreadnought or a Blood Crusher of their own, while keeping the Havoc suppression. Because the Blood Crusher, like if he got a Blood Crusher of his own, that would be something that would actually, it would function as AV, but it would also function as more than AV, and it would actually function quite effectively as anti-infantry, whereas both of these, the Havocs and the Plague Marines, are really really do very little against infantry. So he's really just choosing to get an overwhelming AV response to help him deal with the vehicle, and there's some implications of that. First of all, if he does manage to take out the vehicle, then he has two squads that aren't going to be doing a whole lot to the rest of the army. I mean, there's certainly things they can do. The Plague Marines can tie things up. The Havoc can bash generators, so can the Plague Marines. But actually, it looks like he just might take out this Blood Crusher. He's cutting it very, very close. I actually think the Plague Marines will be able to shoot one more missile shot, and they should be able to take out this Blood Crusher. Just one more shot, and they actually do take out the Blood Crusher. So Cyris also lost a Heretic squad in that engagement. Now, so, I mean, it's certainly good that he took out the Blood Crusher, but at the same time, he changed his composition so much that now he's actually not as well suited to fighting infantry. He doesn't have his Suppression Havoc anymore, and then he has these Plague Marines, which are just not really that strong against as an anti-infantry unit. They certainly do some damage, and I think someone pointed out that the damage they do right now is slightly better than Vulture Scouts, which you can still use that to bleed models off of something like Heretics. You can use it to fight other ranged squads, kind of, but they're still definitely not excelling in that role. I think it's just nice that in the Elite mod, Plague Marines have their damage increased slightly so that they can actually sort of function as anti-infantry without making them a little too good and being anti-all. But we've seen a lot of blood sacrifices. We see a blood sacrifice right there. I thought Soul Drinkers did another one before. And we do see that right now. I mean, certainly at least in combination with these blood sacrifice bloodletters, that for the most part, the Soul Drinkers has had control. He has had the map. Cyris is more frequently finding him doing things like using a unit to bash a power node right here, which is honestly the best use of this Havoc right now. I mean, once a Havoc, a las cannon Havoc, or any kind of basically any kind of setup anti-vehicle team has taken out a vehicle, the best it can do is bash generators and capture points. So that's what he's doing with it, basically. But we do have Chaos Lord upgrades. We do have a Lightning Claw Chaos Lord, and as well as the Icon of Khorne. This will allow him to restore some health with each strike. So this could actually work out pretty well against Soul Drinkers, because this is Cyris's build. Soul Drinkers, of course, not having as much range damage coming out as Cyris does, so he's not going to be able to focus down the Chaos Lord as much. And the Chaos Lord, Cyris's Chaos Lord is going to have a lot of staying power, because he'll be able to especially tie up Soul Drinkers, Chaos Space Marines, get a lot of healing out of them, And then if Cyris uses something like the Destructive Strike ability from the Lightning Claws on the Heretics, that can actually be very, very devastating to them. Now, nevertheless, it's still Soul Drinkers is still the one controlling the map. Meanwhile, he's gone for a Bubble Cast Lord, except for the fact that instead of getting the Lightning Claws, he got the Blood Maul. And the Lightning Claws probably would be better for him as well, but the Blood Maul will still certainly function. Cyris, however, he chose not to upgrade his Chaos Space Marines, which is not a terrible idea. He chose to just get Eternal War. He's had those since Tier 1. They're not going to be terribly effective against the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, which are going to be very, very effective against these Eternal War Chaos Space Marines. Nevertheless, Cyris is still winning this engagement, but I mean, he took so much damage from the Tzeentch fire of that Chaos Space Marine squad that he lost a model and had to retreat one of those squads anyway, even though he was going to win on brute force just by charging in. But these Eternal War Chaos Space Marines are still going to have a damage penalty against heavy armor, so against these Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines right here, as well as this Havoc. And also just not getting the major damage boost that they would get out of getting the Mark of Tzeentch. The Mark of Tzeentch does something, I don't remember the exact statistics, but it is something, roughly, the Mark of Tzeentch gives an increase in base DPS of 37%, whereas Eternal War is only 20%. And that's the increase in base DPS. Then we're also factoring in that Mark of Tzeentch allows the squad to do Inferno damage, which does full damage to infantry, bonus damage to heavy infantry, and full damage to super heavy infantry, which is a huge upgrade over the piercing damage of most Tier 1 squads, including the vanilla Chaos Space Marines. So Chaos Predator on the way for Soul Drinkers. So far, Soul Drinkers has been the one who's been playing more proactively, while Cyris has the one been playing more reactively. Since in both cases, in both tiers, Soul Drinkers is the one getting the vehicle first. Not even necessarily worrying about getting anti-vehicle. In fact, Soul Drinkers has not really had to react to a vehicle. While Cyris is the one who is getting all the anti-vehicle weapons. And Cyris has at least taken the map now. But I mean, wow, look at this. Look at the way Cyris is actually losing a lot of models on his Chaos Space Marines, or rather, oh, no, my mistake. Those were Cyrus's Chaos Space Marines against Soul Drinkers Heretics. And I mean, I guess right there, those Heretics were in melee against Chaos Space Marines, and those Chaos Space Marines are actually, at level 2, they're actually doing a substantial amount of melee damage, so they were bleeding models off those Heretics. Although, well, there was also a lot of support coming out of these squads as well, I suppose. But wow, look at the build that Soul Drinkers has right now. He threw on another squad of Chaos Space Marines, choosing to get Eternal War on that squad. He might be deciding that he actually needs something to deal with the Chaos Lord. And it is interesting. So again, Soul Drinkers playing with more initiative, forcing, kind of exerting his will on Cyris. And there are ways in which that's definitely giving him the game, or the way, kind of giving him the advantage. And he's winning the game in terms of VPs, generally had more map control, generally been more aggressive, and generally had more control. Now, part of what Cyris is doing better, though, is that he's I mean, from the start of Tier 1, he was doing more to deal with the Chaos Lord. Doing more to deal with the Chaos Lord, yeah, basically just doing more to deal with the Chaos Lord, and I feel like Cyrus's Chaos Lord has had a lot more free reign. I mean, as it is, we have a squad of fully upgraded Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, and already they just lost a model because the Chaos Lord just got in, and once the Chaos Lord gets in, I mean, the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines seems to be that effective. I mean, right now there are so many things that Cyris is doing right in this engagement. Just from the positioning he had, getting his Chaos Lord into those Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, leading 2 of their models. And it's actually quite amazing the way Cyris actually very soundly won that engagement, despite having less, not having the vehicle. So I feel like Cyris won that engagement. He also needs to make sure that he capitalizes on that one engagement by securing some map control, since he is behind on certainly significantly behind on VPs. I don't like what Soul Drinkers is doing right here. That should actually be a dead... That should probably be a dead Predator. Yep, dead Predator. So that was not very good. He was chasing these Chaos Space Marines into base, but I knew that was going to put him in a situation where he was going to get pincered because the Havoc was chasing after him, and then he's chasing Plague Marines, which are themselves an AV unit. So he found himself caught between two AV units, which is often one of the worst places your vehicle can be caught pincered between the two sources of AV. Chaos Lord right here, kind of doing nothing, tanking a lot. Now we see the Tzeentch... Oh, these are not even Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. But, Cyris is now actually the one choosing to get a vehicle. He's saving up for a Land Raider Phobos. One of the other things we should observe is the fact that Soul Drinkers has been using his red. He's been using it on... Whoa. Okay, so... Cyris not paying attention, and there loses one of his squads of Chaos Space Marines, in part because, I mean, we got double squads of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, as well as some heretics right here with grenade launchers that probably knocked them down, and then just all the follow-up fire was just really destroyed those Chaos Space Marines very, very quickly. And I mean, even though Cyris is now upgrading to the Mark of Tzeentch, in terms of range, in terms of infantry to infantry range damage, Cyris is now at a huge disadvantage now that Soul Drinkers has actually chosen to get a second squad of Chaos Space Marines, and he's upgraded them both to the Mark of Tzeentch. They're fully upgraded, both of them. I think the saving grace that Cyris has now is that he finally now has this Land Raider Phobos, and Soul Drinkers has not had to react to a vehicle all game, so he still has literally no AP whatsoever. And he chose to get a squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, which is good for having a second squad, a second source of range fire, but at the same time, he just spent a lot of resources getting something that does not help him that much against vehicles. Instead of getting that second squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, he could have chosen to get a squad of Chaos Terminators, and that's something that would give him that extra source of range fire, while also giving him a significant source of AV in the form of that autocannon. With Doom Blast, that should have been a wipe on this Heretic squad. So a little disappointing not to see that Doom Blast right there. Just a little disappointing to see good players. These are good players right here. Not be aware, just miss that. Basically, just Doom Blast is very good at killing units on retreat. You can really just do really nasty things on retreat. It's something that really makes Chaos really good at killing retreating units. Doom Blast with Heretics on retreat. Do it. But what I was trying to say before Cyris lost the squad of Chaos Space Marines is that we should observe that Soul Drinkers has been using some red at times. He's been using Blood Sacrifice to get Bloodletters. Oh man, look at the ridiculous range damage coming out of this. Now this is a very powerful. The damage coming out of this is absolutely ridiculous. But Soul Drinker still literally has nothing to deal with vehicles, so he might want to get a las cannon on this Havoc, because I mean at this time I don't even think he needs the suppression that much. He has a huge amount of range DPS coming out of these Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. I think he can forego the suppression. And we even have double squads of grenade launcher heretics. Maybe Cyris just feeling how effective Soul Drinker's grenade launcher has been against him and actually choosing to do something about it. And I mean, yeah, now with that double Tzeentch fire, Cyrus's Chaos Lord is pretty well countered, and it's actually Soul Drinkers who has the Chaos Lord that's in quite a bit of danger. Or Soul Drinkers who has the Chaos Lord, well, he's actually getting torn apart by this Land Raider Phobos. But Soul Drinkers has been used some red. He actually does almost have enough to do an Abyss. Cyris is floating red massively, and that's a little bit disappointing. He has enough red that he could use an Imperial Abyss, and then probably as soon as the Imperial Abyss is off cooldown, he could use it again. He could use an Imperial Abyss and then use a bunch of other globals. We got a lone squad of Chaos Space Marines with only 3 models trying to face off against these double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine squads with 4 models, and they're just not going to win that fight. And I mean, even one thing that Cyris could do, which it would be a little cheeky, whatever that means, I'm not even British, but I think my usage is correct here. He could use an Imperial Abyss on this las cannon Havoc, wipe it out, and then Soul Drinkers doesn't even have AV anymore. And then that, even though that would be very expensive to just kill a Havoc, that would leave him in a very, very favorable position, considering the fact that Cyris has this Land Raider Phobos. Now, ideally, the best way to use the Imperial Abyss these days. Oh man, Cyris is going to lose his Grenade Launcher Heretics though. Might want to get some Aspiring Champions on them just to give them survivability. To be honest, the optimal way to use the Imperial Abyss these days is to just use it in base. Even though there are people who are not fond of that, that really is just the best way to... Wow, so Cyris, unfortunately, is starting to drop his micro and losing squads. Just probably pretty much the best way to use the Imperial Abyss these days is in base, since the primary weakness of Imperial Abyss is that it can really be nullified a lot by retreating out of it. And you can't retreat if you're in base because you're already at base. Cyris also has to contend with the fact that he's on the losing end of VPs at the moment. He has only a single cap, and the VPs are also numerically just not in his favor. So he's trying to go for a capture with his Plague Marines. That means his Plague Marines are not going to be going after this Predator right here. But I think Cyris might just push forward a little bit with his Land Raider. He does have to be a little worried about overextending his Land Raider. But I think he is going to take out this Predator at this point. So he does take out the Predator. Cyris now looking in a very, very good position, especially if he can take out this Havoc. Ooh, and this is going to hurt a little bit with Cyris now driving right into the firing arc of that las cannon Havoc. Fortunately, he should actually be able to disrupt and damage that las cannon Havoc. He might even be able to take out this las cannon Havoc. But there is the Imperial Abyss, and unfortunately Cyris not quite... Wow, so that was an Imperial Abyss that ultimately I would say favored Soul Drinkers. That was Soul Drinkers Abyss, and he wiped one squad of Heretics. He should have kept those Chaos Space Marines in there because he probably would have wiped this one as well. But he sees he has this, so he gets it. Oh, man. So that ultimately left Cyris in a very poor position. So Soul Drinkers actually choosing to use that Abyss, Cyris not reacting, and the Imperial Abyss, to the extent that you can use it just raw in the middle of an engagement, it is actually best used against weaker squads, despite its damage potential, and that is actually, again, because of the fact that you can retreat out of it so easily. So it's best against squads where you need to react very quickly if you want to retreat out of it and save your squads. In this case, he was just using it on really, really weak squads, so there wasn't actually much time for him to react. But, I mean, there are a lot of things that Cyris is doing very well in this game. There are things that both of these players are doing better than each other. Unfortunately, one of the things that Cyris is really not doing well for a good player is that he's at 999 red, and as far as I can tell, he has not used any of it whatsoever. And that is a huge mistake for this is, I would say, I mean, this is a an upper mid to high level game between these players. So a little disappointing to see that just literally no red use out of Cyris. He's got enough to do 2 Abysses now. And there we go. He finally does an Abyss and does take out the Havoc. And that does leave him in the very... Now that leaves Cyris in the very advantageous positioning of now Soul Drinkers has no AV whatsoever. So if he wants to do anything, he needs to get some kind of AV. So he's getting a new Havoc, which is not terribly surprising. But Cyris is definitely in the stronger position right now, but there's still another Havoc going up. which I'm sure will upgrade to a las cannon, because I mean that's at this point that's basically what Soul Drinkers can get. Even a Plague Marine squad would be a little bit out of his price range, and to be honest, not really strong enough, since a las cannon Havoc, although cheaper than a Plague Marine squad, as a source of AV in terms of how much damage it does and what its chances are of actually taking a vehicle out, the las cannon Havoc is quite a bit better. Well, here we have a Chaos... Oh no, that was absolutely not worth it. From Cyris, that might have been a desperation tactic, or he might have just lost track of his... his Chaos Lord, because he... Part of the thing for Cyris is that I feel like he really cannot afford to give up. At this point, he really cannot afford to give up any VPs. He can afford the VPs going to a 1-to-1 configuration, but he cannot afford the VPs going in favor of Soul Drinkers. He cannot afford a 2-to-1 cap, and unfortunately, I think this is really bad for Cyris because he's probably now going to lose his Land Raider Phobos. Yeah, there's no way this Land Raider Phobos is getting out of there in time. Taking too many shots. One more las cannon shot will do it, and there goes the Land Raider Phobos. And unfortunately for Cyris, he can't even get this Chaos Lord off the point in time. And there's also he's actually gonna now really struggling to deal with that Havoc, because the only other units he has are Heretics. They're just going to die from the range fire of the Chaos Space Marines. Wow, that was a huge amount of damage coming out of that Havoc. But this looks like it's probably going to go in favor of Soul Drinkers. And I think certainly one thing that I think Cyris could have done to make this game go in his favor would be to use more red earlier. So yeah, I mean, Cyris is losing everything at this point. So there's another, there we go with his second Abyss. So that at least manages to keep the VPs kind of like stalled out. But we do have a squad of Heretics right here. We need to see Cyrus's Chaos Lord appears to be doing nothing. Oh, it was probably caught in a sync kill. Oh, that's really bad. Now, oh, it's too many sync kills, and that's actually really hurting Cyris. He needs to... Where's he going? What Cyris needs to do... Yes, he needs to use Destructive Strike. Very smart. And now he needs to really start capturing this point immediately. Alright, oh, these are Soul Drinkers Terminators, and I actually don't entirely see what Cyris can do about this. But he really needed to use his abilities a little bit faster. Like, he needed to use Destructive Strike immediately, and then, like, just kind of follow that up with, I think, with Kill the Weak, just constantly disrupting those Heretics. It's a 1-to-1, but, I mean, Cyris is having a lot of trouble, I think, going to be dealing with these Chaos Terminators. Terminators are just going to straight up go for the cap, and I don't think there's anything Cyris can do to stop it at this point. I mean, he's going to try to hit them with the Heretics. I don't even know why, actually, why Soul Drinker stopped. I guess because he could actually seriously wipe out those Heretics. But now he's in a situation, I actually feel like Soul Drinkers may have shot himself a little bit in the foot right here. I feel like if he just went raw for the victory point, he would have captured it. And now Soul Drinkers is suddenly in a bad position. I think what Cyris needs to do now, Cyris needs to get his own Chaos Lord on this point. Well, actually, his Chaos Lord is going to be in a losing battle against Soul Drinkers. Very crazy ending. Alright. I mean, we're fighting to the end, but I think Soul Drinkers is going to take it at this point. Might even lose his own Chaos Lord, but no, Cyris is the one who loses his Chaos Lord. Soul Drinkers will lose his Chaos Lord, but at this point it's not going to matter. Because unfortunately these Chaos Terminators are getting absolutely murdered by the Double Zinj Chaos Space Marine Fire, which is just a very good counter to Terminators. And the VPs actually do tick down in favor of Soul Drinkers. So that was a great game for so many reasons, although certainly the big disappointment was seeing Cyris float that red massively. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.